Hello everyone, first news update for 5th of April. Now it's about 11 o'clock Moscow time, and rare occasion when I'm starting update with something not about politics, geopolitics, wars and stuff, something from a sporting world. And well, news is that Russian hockey star Ovechkin is tied now with Wayne Gretzky, legendary hockey player also, Wayne Gretzky. And during the recent game that Ovechkin's team, Washington Capitals, play, Ovechkin scored 2 goals, and basically now he has same score as Gretzky, 894 goals or bullets. And there are 6 games are left before season will end in NHL. So therefore there is quite a high chance, quite high possibility that Ovechkin is going to break this record. So congrats to Ovechkin, congrats to his team, Washington Capitals. Great achievement that will be written in sports history with the golden letters. So cool stuff. Let's continue with some more news now. And RIA Novosti is reporting that Russian armed forces liberated 2 more settlements in a DPR. Information is confirmed by Defense Ministry, and these settlements are Rozovka and Uspenovka. So much for stalemate, isn't it? We are on daily basis receiving news, information about more and more settlements and territories being liberated by Russian forces, but in the Western world, it's a stalemate. Nothing is happening. And unfortunately, vast majority of societies in the West really are believing in that nonsense, because only source of information for them is MSM. So what else do you expect in that case? RT is also reporting about successful Russian long-range strike on a point of gathering of commanding officers of the Kiev regime's forces and foreign instructors in Kryvyi Rog city. And according to reports in Russian media, more than 85 individuals from enemy forces were neutralized as a result of these strikes. Also, Russian sources are reporting that outside of strike was on a restaurant, Magellan, in Kryvyi Rog. Let me show you on a map. So this is Kryvyi Rog city that I'm zooming in now, and this is the restaurant where over 100 officers, military personnel, and these foreign instructors were gathering for whatever reason. And well, Russian military intelligence find out about it. Immediately was launched Iskander missile, according to reports, and strike was successful. Majority of the enemy personnel were liquidated as a result of this strike. And also what we know is that around the building, around this restaurant, there was 15 SUVs, about 15 SUVs with their security guards, which means that a significant number of these officers and potentially NATO representatives were present at that event, whatever it was, because of this fact that they were moving with the security. And usually, security is assigned to some high-ranking officers, right? And therefore, it is quite a possibility that some maybe generals were exterminated, liquidated as a result of this strike, generals of the Kiev regime forces, and who knows, maybe generals or the colonels, high-ranking officers, anyways, of the NATO, some of the NATO countries, most likely UK, potentially France, or maybe even US officers, by the way, who knows, we might find out about it little more in upcoming days, but most likely information will be classified, and only after years maybe UK and France or US will declassify information about their losses during this proxy war that they are waging against Russia. So successful strike on part of Russian troops. Significant number of enemy officers were neutralized and enemy personnel. Meanwhile, RIA Novosti is also reporting that during the Kursk adventure, so-called adventure of the Kiev regime's suicidal adventure, Russian armed forces destroyed 15 Western-trained, Western-armed brigades of the Kiev regime, and overall number of losses on part of the enemy amounted to 72,000. For now, 22,000 enemy troops were killed and about 50,000 enemy troops were wounded, majority of whom will never go back to battlefield due to severe injuries. Huge losses, obviously, and at this point, hardly anyone with more or less good knowledge of the situation will dispute that this Kursk invasion was a major failure on part of NATO, on part of Kiev regime, and they end up basically in a trap. One may even say they themselves created a trap for the Kiev regime's forces, for their own forces, while authorizing this incursion. Huge losses, thousands and thousands of different type of equipments were destroyed of the enemy in the Kursk salient area, and now this counter-terrorist operation is in final stages. Clearing operation, according to reports, clearing operation is underway in a Gueva settlement. This is a Gueva village. Also, clearing operation is underway, according to report that I see, in Aleshnya settlement. This is the Aleshnya settlement, and most likely before end of next week, entire this borderline strip will be cleared from enemy presence. Currently, Kiev regime's troops in the Kursk region are in 3 settlements only, that is Gueva, Garnal, and Aleshnya. That's being said, let's go through some other news also, and for example, Lentaru is reporting that Zelensky spoke about deployment of French and British troops into Ukraine, and he said that soon these troops of NATO member states will arrive in Ukraine. He emphasized that probably deployment, at least in a large scale, will take place after some sort of ceasefire is reached, but we all understand that these talks about ceasefire is just an attempt to divert attention of the public, because currently, based on objective information that we have, it is hard to tell that anytime soon we're gonna see real ceasefire. It's not happening because, once again, Russia was very clear, Russian leadership was very clear that temporary measures are completely unacceptable. As unacceptable is NATO troops to be deployed into Kiev-controlled territory, and therefore we should expect not de-escalation, not ceasefire, but we should expect further escalation on the battlefield, next phase of escalation, and this topic of NATO troops into Ukraine is definitely part of it. So yes, I mean, society, public have been prepared now, I guess, quite heavily or propagandized in Europe on Kiev-controlled territory that soon British and French troops are gonna arrive there, and what that means we all know, isn't it? Russian side will have no option but to treat them as combatants and to eliminate. It is what it is. Interfax, meanwhile, is reporting that so-called president of France, Macron, is ready to represent all of Europe in negotiations with Russia on Ukrainian crisis. So French President Emmanuel Macron intends to become Europe's main representative in negotiations with Russian President Vladimir Putin on a Ukrainian settlement. The Telegraph reports some members of their coalition of the willing are pushing for a European leader to take charge of contacts with Russia as a part of efforts to support Kiev. The publication writes, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer is also named as the most likely interlocutor with Moscow. However, according to the newspaper, he does not plan to hold the talks with Putin as a part of Britain's efforts to support Ukraine's defense. Well, you know what? Who the hell is Macron or who the hell is Starmer? These nobodies definitely don't deserve attention of the Russian president. I mean, let's be real here. Who are they? I mean, these puppets of the globalists. I mean, what the hell? Why should the Russian president spend even a second talking to these clowns? It's nonsensical, by the way. European so-called elites are going crazy, man, as time goes by, and soon they're gonna go completely insane. If things continue this on the current direction, they're gonna go completely insane very shortly. Who tell the either Starmer or either Macron that they are that important on the geopolitical map that Putin will spend time talking to them? I mean, I don't know. Putin is quite diplomatic, of course, and after all, he spoke with Trump for no reason, really. I mean, there was no reason to speak to Trump. It was also a waste of time, and he might actually had a conversation with Trump once again in upcoming days, maybe early next week, according to some reports. But after all, US is at least a major superpower, right? And when it comes to UK and France, I mean, come on, man, these territories barely can be called a sovereign state, right? So who are these people, Macron and Starmer? Nobodies, complete nobodies. And I really hope Russian president will spend no time talking to these clowns, man. As time goes by, I don't know about you, dear friends, but I really have a feeling that we are living in some freaking circus. Entire world has been turned into a circus by these morons that are in charge of collective West. You know, and the rest of the world is just forced to deal with this, you know. Anyways, I think it's worth noticing that, well, there is such a movements in Europe that they want to pick one person who will represent European position in the negotiations. Although I don't think Europe has a seat on the table, next to the table. I mean, they are not that important, really, these European elites, to be part of the negotiations. And I hope Russia will not make a same mistake as Stalin made after Second World War, when he, for no reason at all, allowed France to become a permanent member of the Security Council of UN. You know, we should not give Europe more attention that it deserves, really. European elites I'm talking about. I never speak about just ordinary people in any critical ways, or maybe I do, actually, but in this particular case I'm talking about elites. RIA Novosti is also reporting that Rubio, and of course, by the way, I'm going to be critical of European societies. Why not? You know, they've been brainwashed, which is their fault. And they are supporters now, direct or indirect supporters of the Nazis and the fascists, right? So they deserve criticism. It's only a tiny part of European society that is well informed and tries to wake up somehow their fellow citizens so that they will realize how devastating these current so-called elites are for their countries, for the future of themselves and their kids and next generations in general. But majority of society in Europe is a total Russophobes, by the way, full of hate. That's how I imagine typical Europeans now, full of hate, Russophobes, xenophobes, racists. That's how I see, by the way. I mean, this may not necessarily be the case, but that's my impression, because they are in support of their governments, right? They support this Russophobia, xenophobia, all this crap. They support this fascist regime in Kiev, these Nazis, right? So what? How else I should see them? As a decent human beings and angels? No, they are not decent human beings. Anybody who supports Nazis is a garbage. Is a garbage, human scum. That's it. Let's be real here, man. I mean, my respect to all the decent people, and there are plenty of them, but unfortunately, this plenty is still extreme minority in scale of Europe, where some 450 million people are living. Majority of them are extreme Russophobes, xenophobes, full of hate, and deserve no respect. Not from me, anyways. RIA Novosti is reporting that, and I'm being real, by the way. Why should I play games here, right? It may not be good for a business, because potentially some of them might watch my videos and stuff, but I don't give a damn, man. If I see something wrong, I will say it, and if I think certain groups of people are bad people, I will say it. They are bad people. Majority of Europeans are bad people. As simple as that. Because they support Nazis and fascists, right? And they support their criminal regimes. It is what it is, man. RIA Novosti is reporting that Marco Rubio, meanwhile, another clown from ocean away. So Marco Rubio stated that White House is experiencing more and more pressure from lawmakers in US, from Congress, to achieve some success in terms of Ukrainian crisis. And if there will be no progress in this direction, then probably they will escalate with Russia. They will come up with more sanctions and that kind of stuff. Okay, easy if we care here in Russia what kind of additional sanctions US going to come up with. It's the US that needs Russia. Many people do not understand really that we don't need no US, no Europe. I mean, we literally can live happily while completely ignoring existence of Europe and US. We can live happily. I mean, we don't need them, right? For anything, really. But US needs Russia. And the European elites, if they were clever enough, they would maintain good friendly relationships with Russia, because the only chance Europe ever had to maintain its relevance on the geopolitical scale was if they were together with Russia. But separately, and by being hostile to Russia, Europe is doomed, by the way. Europe is just doomed, finished, right? 20, 30 years, and that's about it. And there are only countries in Europe that will be able to maintain at least some level of quality of life, and their statehood will be countries that will have good relationships with Russia. Rest is finished. It's just, I mean, it's going to be factual, by the way. Just wait for another 20, 30 years, and it becomes clear. It will become clear. But US, even though US has potential to maintain relevance on a geopolitical scale, because it does has resources, necessary resources for that, still, by the way, without Russian assistance, US gonna find itself being isolated, right? US gonna find itself being isolated, and in many areas, US needs Russian support. So therefore, I don't think this is a correct approach on part of White House when they are, deploying this tactic of sticks and carrots, and they are talking on topic of Russia or about Russia with, on the other hand, they are kind of trying to de-escalate, but in other hand, they are coming up with some additional threats. This is wrong, man. This is wrong. It's not gonna be beneficial for US, and the US leadership should realize that it's them that need good relationships with Russia, working relationships with Russia. We can ignore US completely, and maybe we should, just ignore existence of the collective West completely, man, because we don't need them for anything, right? And this is the true, by the way, objective reality. What for we need a US? I mean, tell me about it. What they have that we don't, or we cannot get? They have nothing, right? Okay, one may argue, I mean, you are publishing your videos on YouTube and stuff. Okay, by the way, I mean, if Russia blocks YouTube completely, and all the Western social platforms, let's say, okay, I will start publishing my articles on Russian platforms, and people worldwide that wants to have access to Russian viewpoint, they will sign up on these Russian platforms. And many already do, by the way. A number of subscribers on Russian networks like Vkontakte or YouTube is increasing. That's what will happen. So technically speaking, we don't really need anything from US, And what about Europe? What they have that we don't? Literally nothing, right? Literally nothing. And don't give me argument that Germans make good cars or Italians make supercars. Who cares, man? Who cares? First of all, let's be real. German cars quality is definitely not even a shadow of the previous generations, right? Nowadays, Mercedes builds some crap, by the way. I mean, you can take a finger and almost make a hole in the car. If that is something to be proud of, then sorry, right? What they do, man, what they have, nothing, literally nothing that we cannot live without. So that's it, man. So it will be better if elites in Europe or in US will realize that they are no longer dominant force in this world. They can no longer dictate to nobody what to do, especially to Russia. And therefore, sooner they will realize this, the better. That's it. At least in regards to US, because potentially I see US as if US will ever have normal elites, normal government, then potentially US might play some positive role on a geopolitical scale. I can see that potential there. Russia, US, India, China, these four major entities definitely can play role of stabilizers for this world. EU is out of conversation, obviously. It's just too irrelevant already. But yet again, for this, US needs to have some adequate people in the government. And when last time US was led by normal people? I can't remember really. I just can't remember. One may argue, no, Reagan was not bad for US. Maybe after Reagan, decline of US has begun, because then there was a Bush, isn't it? Older Bush, then younger Bush. Who else was a president there? Obama, Trump, Biden, total freaks, man. Right? And I think golden age of US was 70s and 80s, sort of. You tell me, dear friends, what you think, but I think that was the golden age of US, 70s, 80s, and after that, decline has started and is accelerating year-on-year terms. Anyways, too much talk about this stuff. So yes, Marco Rubio is threatening, kind of. So congressman will increase pressure on the White House to tighten anti-Russian sanctions, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio said in an interview with the journalists in Brussels. There will be increasing pressure from Capitol Hill to impose the sanctions that we will not be able to stop unless we actually move towards peace, he said. Okay, Russia was very clear about this proxy war that West is waging against Russia. So because it's a West that is waging this proxy war, it is a West that has to start de-escalating, right? Kiev is a proxy and decides nothing, right? So therefore, it's up to Washington, London, Paris, Berlin, and some others when this conflict will end. It's up to them, right? So if US was serious about the escalation, they would stop supplying weapons, supplying munition and intelligence, but they did not, right? And that's the clearest indicator that they are just messing around. So therefore, Russia will react accordingly. That's it. And also Rubio, by the way, stated that US intends to increase defense spendings up to 5% of GDP. So they already are spending like 800 billion, isn't it? Plus on Pentagon alone, and another couple of hundred billions on other federal institutions that are directly or indirectly connected with the defense and security. There is over 30 intelligence institutions in US. Can you imagine? 3 dozen of institutions that receive billions, and all of them are working in the same field. What the hell, man? And so, yes, this is a good news, great news actually for military-industrial complex of US. They're gonna receive additional billions and billions. So okay, I mean, what can I say, man? Instead of reorganizing their economy, they are doubling down on this corrupt system, right? So that's why US is most likely also doomed, by the way, for failure, because no tariffs, nothing gonna help US to survive unless economical system is changed. And when they are spending, and they're gonna spend about 1.5 trillion every single year on defense and security alone, when they are spending another trillion on servicing the debt, how are they gonna survive? US may be the richest country in this world, according to some numbers based on GDP, but still they don't have that much money to spend it like this crazy. So unless they will reform economical system itself, you know, they're not gonna go anywhere. But well, they will have enough money to kill innocent people worldwide. That's what US does best. They are just killing innocent. US and Israel, by the way, 2 countries that are extremely successful in killing civilians in mass. And Trump, president of US, published a video of US airstrike on Yemen, on a gathering of some people in Yemen, and Trump presented this as if Houthi fighters were targeted. But well, it appears to be just a traditional gathering of the local tribes. That's how they gather when they discuss something of importance, or maybe there is some celebration or something. So that's the picture, by the way, of traditional customs there. That's how people gather in a circles, and that's the video that Trump shared when people are gathering in that manner, and then strike, and that's it. So it is a possibility that US militaries kill dozens of civilians once again. The newspaper is reporting that Canada also has some ambitions, at least Canada's current leader, because according to this modern leadership of Canada, they want to replace US as a global leader. That's quite ambitious stuff, isn't it? Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has expressed the country's readiness to replace the United States as the world's economic leader and create a coalition of like-minded countries. Well, I'm not gonna comment anymore on that, by the way. You tell me how delusional this new Prime Minister of Canada is. Canada, Canadians were also unfortunate, I mean, at least in last several decades, because they constantly have some stupider elements in the leadership. In Canada, from most desirable country for living, like some 30 years ago, turned into some, I don't know, man, something that even Canadians no longer recognize, which is unfortunate. I mean, it's bad, but yet again, when people are passive, when people are, you know, not spending enough time to know better, their decisions are becoming poorer and poorer, and as a result, they are supporting some morons like Trudeau was, like this one now, and the results are according to these poor decisions. RT is reporting that China hits back at US with 34% import tariffs. China will impose 34% tariffs on all imports from the US starting April 10. The country's finance ministry announced on Friday. The decision follows US President Donald Trump's announcement of 34% levy on Chinese goods in the latest escalation of a tariff war. So this is big, by the way. Of course, this will hit US businesses quite significantly, ones that are, you know, doing business in China, and so I don't know, man, what Trump is doing. In the long run, this tariff war might somewhat help US, because many companies, especially in the collective US countries, will move their manufacturing plants into US, and that will create jobs and additional income for the country. It seems logical, but losses that whole this process of reindustrialization is connected with might actually exceed profits that US might gain when majority of the companies that are planning to move their manufacturing to US will do so. Already, according to reports, since Trump's inauguration, some 11 trillion was wiped out from US stock markets. 11 trillion, by the way, which is quite stuff. Even though US stock markets were immensely inflated anyways, right? And it's a correction now, and not enough, in my personal opinion. Markets still inflated there on extreme levels, but still, I mean, at least on a level of psychology, this information will play quite negative, will have quite negative impact on societies, and especially on businessmen that are, you know, investing, right? So I don't know, man. I don't know what US is doing, what US leadership is doing. They have to address their main issue that they have, which is abnormal economy, in which a military-industrial complex plays major role. It was maybe understandable during the Cold War, right? Because US wanted to be on a pair with Soviet Union, but Soviet Union does not exist for 30 years now. But and US should, you know, conduct some reforms, but they did not. They still heavily rely on military-industrial complex. Influence of military-industrial complex is only increasing, and I predicted, isn't it, before even Trump was inaugurated, that most likely new administration will spend even more for defense, or will enrich even further military-industrial complex, and that's exactly what is happening. I mean, Rubio already said that US will spend 5% of its GDP on defense And I'm not sure US can afford this. I mean, these crazy spendings. And it's not just me that's skeptical. For example, JP Morgan, one of the biggest financial institutions in the West, in the US, predicts that United States are destined for a recession. So import tariffs imposed by US President Donald Trump will push the US into recession as early as 2025, JP Morgan Chase economist Michael Ferroli said on Saturday, April 5th. We now expect real GDP to contract under the weight of tariffs. For the full year, we expect real GDP growth to be 0.3, down from 1.3 previously. Bloomberg quotes the economist as saying. So yes, US is definitely not in a good place, and until main issues of US economy is addressed, I don't think anything gonna help this country. And very same JP Morgan predicts that world economy may sink into recession also, and according to experts of the JP Morgan, there is 60% chance that this will happen this year. And it might happen actually, because if US is doomed to recession, doomed for recession, then US is a still major economy in this world. So if US is going down, world economy is going down. There is a direct connection there, direct link. Anyways, dear friends, this is it for now. Relatively short update. Hopefully you will find it informative and interesting, and if so, please click that like button and leave some commentary just about anything, any topic. This is the only way we can deal with this extremely aggressive algorithm, especially on YouTube. Although likes and comments help, might help on Rumble too, by the way, if you are watching on Rumble. Yesterday YouTube, for whatever reason, especially didn't like my video, and it was suppressed big time. But maybe today's video will do a little better. Don't know. Dear friends, if you like my work in general, if you like my channels and want to support, you can do it. Or if you can afford to support, you can do it through several means. You can support with donation through PayPal or Boosty platforms, or you can subscribe to my page on Patreon and Boosty, where I have quite a lot of extra content on weekly basis. All the links are on this video in the description box and in the pinned comment, including crypto wallet in case you are operating with crypto. So this is it for now. Have a wonderful day and take care.